I used to believe in certainties. 23 years of marriage teaches you that. Or so I thought. Linda and I had built something unshakable, something that weathered job losses, sick parents, teenage rebellion, and all the small earthquakes that test a marriage. I was Thomas Brennan, 47, senior accountant at Murphy & Associates, the kind of man who never missed a deadline or a family dinner. Linda was 45, part-time dental receptionist with a laugh that could fill a room and an independence I admired. We had Jake, 19, brilliant engineering student, and Sophie, 18, college-bound with dreams bigger than our suburban house could contain. Our life had rhythms. Sunday morning pancakes. Wednesday date nights, even if it was just takeout and Netflix. Linda's girls' nights with Carol and the yoga crowd. My weekend golf with the guys from work. We gave each other space to breathe, to be individuals within our partnership. I trusted her completely. Trusted her judgment, her choices, her need for autonomy. She'd say she was going shopping, and I'd kiss her goodbye without question. She'd mention dinner with old co-workers, and I'd encourage her to go. Trust was our foundation, solid as the mortgage we'd nearly paid off. The house reflected our contentment. Family photos lined the hallway. Vacations to Yellowstone, Jake's high school graduation, Sophie's prom night. Inside jokes decorated our conversations. I knew Linda's coffee order by heart, and she could predict which documentary I'd choose on Friday nights. We weren't passionate anymore, not like newlyweds, but we were comfortable, settled, safe. I should have recognized the shift sooner. Looking back, the signs were there. Linda glowing at her phone, taking calls in the other room, sudden interest in new clothes and makeup. But I interpreted these changes charitably. She was discovering herself again, maybe, finding confidence as our kids grew independent. I actually encouraged it, proud that my wife was becoming more vibrant as she approached 50. Then came that Saturday afternoon in late October. Jake walked through the front door like a man carrying invisible weight. His usual easy smile was gone, replaced by something hollow and distant. He moved through our house like a stranger, avoiding eye contact, shoulders hunched. At dinner, he pushed food around his plate while Linda chattered about her day. Shopping with Carol, she claimed, finding great deals at the outlet mall. Jake wouldn't look at her. "Not once. What's wrong, honey?" Linda asked, reaching across the table toward him. "You seem upset." Jake flinched away from her touch. "Just tired," he muttered. "Final exams coming up. But I knew my son. I'd raised him, watched him navigate friendships and heartbreak and academic pressure. This wasn't exam stress. This was something deeper. Something that made him glance at his mother with an expression I couldn't quite identify. Hurt? Disgust? Fear? Linda went back to her phone, smiling at something on the screen, thumbs flying across the keyboard. A text came in, and her face lit up. The kind of expression I hadn't seen directed at me in months. She typed back quickly, biting her lower lip the way she used to when we were dating, and she was flirting with me. Jake noticed too. He watched her with that same unreadable expression, then excused himself and disappeared upstairs. That night, I found him sitting on his bed, staring at nothing. "You sure you're okay?" I asked gently. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes that terrified me. The look of a son who knows his father's world is about to end. "Dad, we need to talk," he said quietly. "But not here. Not tonight." I told myself it was school stress. I told myself boys Jake's age go through phases. But when he finally looked at me that night before bed, I knew I was lying to myself. Sunday morning came gray and cold, November settling over our neighborhood like a heavy blanket. I suggested a walk to Jake over breakfast, just the two of us, father and son, like when he was small and had problems too big for his child-sized vocabulary. Linda barely looked up from her phone when we left, murmuring something about grocery shopping later. We walked 3 blocks in silence, past houses where other families lived their Sunday routines. Fathers washing cars, mothers hanging laundry, children riding bikes in driveways. Normal families, intact families. Families where sons didn't carry secrets that made them avoid their mother's eyes. Jake stopped at Riverside Park, near the old swing set where I'd pushed him as a toddler. The irony wasn't lost on me, returning to a place of innocence to have innocence destroyed. "Dad, I need to tell you something," he said, his voice cracking like it used to when he was 13. Something about Mom. The ground beneath me felt unstable. "What about her?" I asked. Jake stared at the empty swings, chains creaking in the wind. "Friday afternoon, I was supposed to meet some friends at this park for basketball. You know the courts on the east side?" I nodded, though my throat was closing. "I got there early and was walking toward the courts when I saw her," he continued. "Mom, she was—" He swallowed hard. "She was with a man." "Not you." My blood pressure spiked. The world narrowed to just Jake's words. "What do you mean with a man?" I managed to ask. "They were kissing, Dad," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. Not like a friendly hug or anything casual. "I mean really kissing? Her hands were in his hair, and he had his arms around her waist, and they were—" Jake's voice broke completely. "They were kissing like you and Mom used to when I was little, and you thought Sophie and I weren't watching. I fought to stay upright, to keep breathing, to remain calm for my son who was clearly drowning in guilt and confusion." "Are you absolutely certain it was your mother?" I asked. "Dad, I hid behind a tree for 5 minutes hoping I was wrong," he answered. "But it was her laugh, her hair, her coat, that burgundy one you bought her last Christmas. And when they broke apart, I saw her face completely. It was Mom." The words hit me like physical blows. "What happened next?" I whispered. He walked her to his car, a black SUV, pretty new, and she got in the passenger side, Jake explained. They drove away together. He finally looked at me, and I saw 20 years of respect and trust dissolving in real time. "Dad, where did she tell you she was Friday afternoon?" I knew the answer. "Shopping with Carol," I said quietly. Jake nodded, tears starting. "I called Carol yesterday," he admitted. "Said I wanted to surprise Mom with flowers for her birthday next month, asked where they went shopping Friday. Carol said she hasn't seen Mom in 2 weeks. The betrayal was a physical thing, eating through my chest like acid. 23 years of marriage, and my wife was living a lie. My son had discovered it. My foundation was gone, but Jake was falling apart in front of me, so I forced myself to think strategically. "Have you told anyone else?" I asked. "No," he replied immediately. "I wanted to tell Sophie, but—" He shrugged helplessly. "How do you tell your sister that Mom is cheating on Dad?" "You don't. Not yet," I said, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears, cold and calculating. "Jake, I need you to promise me something. We act completely normal at home until I figure out what to do. Can you do that?" He nodded, wiping his eyes. "And Jake," I added, "you did the right thing telling me. I know this is killing you, but you're not responsible for your mother's choices." We practiced neutral expressions before walking home. Linda greeted us cheerfully, asking about our walk. I kissed her cheek, the same cheek another man had kissed 2 days ago, and lied smoothly about discussing Jake's upcoming exams. She smiled and returned to her coffee and her phone, typing another message to someone I no longer had the luxury of assuming was innocent. That night, I lay beside her listening to her breathe, watching her phone light up with a late-night text she didn't hear, and I realized something that chilled me to my core. I didn't know this woman at all. 23 years, and she was a complete stranger. Monday morning, I sat across from Martin Cross in his downtown office, surrounded by filing cabinets and framed licenses that testified to his expertise in discovering people's darkest secrets. Martin was mid-50s, sharp-eyed, with the kind of weathered face that suggested he'd seen every variety of human betrayal. 23 years of marriage, he said, reviewing the notes I'd given him. Son caught her with another man. "You want full surveillance?" "Everything," I confirmed. "Photos, video, GPS tracking, financial records if possible. I need enough evidence to bury her in court." Martin quoted his fee. Substantial, but I didn't care. My savings account was about to become a weapon. "How long do you want me to follow her?" he asked. "Until you have irrefutable proof," I answered. "However long that takes." The next 2.5 weeks were psychological warfare disguised as normal marriage. I went to work, came home, asked Linda about her day. She told elaborate stories, shopping with Carol, lunch dates with former co-workers, yoga classes that ran late, errands that somehow took 4 hours. I nodded and smiled and died inside with each lie. The suffocating tension infected our entire house. Jake avoided his mother's eyes at dinner, responding to her questions with one-word answers. Sophie kept asking what was wrong with everyone. Why Jake seemed angry all the time, why the house felt weird. Linda was too absorbed in her phone to notice her son's pain or her daughter's confusion. I observed my wife with new eyes, cataloging details I'd previously ignored. How she lit up when texting, how she took calls in the garage, claiming it was about boring work stuff, how she'd started caring about her appearance again. New clothes, expensive makeup, a gym membership she'd never mentioned wanting before. She was becoming a stranger in my own house, and the cruelest part was how happy she seemed, glowing, energized, alive in ways she hadn't been with me in years. The waiting was agony, but I remained patient, playing the role of oblivious husband perfectly. When she claimed to be shopping, I wished her fun. When she said she'd be late from yoga, I told her to drive safely. When she came home with shopping bags that contained items she never wore around the house, I complimented her taste. 3 weeks after hiring Martin, he called. "I've got what you need," he said over the phone. "Can you come in today?" I left work, early, telling my assistant I had a dentist appointment. The irony wasn't lost on me. Lying to cover up the discovery of lies. Martin's office felt different this time, charged with the electricity of completion. Photographs spread across his desk like evidence at a crime scene. My wife's face smiled, back at me from a dozen different angles, but she wasn't smiling at me. "Scott Mercer," Martin said, pointing to the man beside her in every photo. 43, married sales manager at Hartwell Electronics. 3 kids, youngest is 8. Wife's name is Rebecca. Stay-at-home mom. I studied Scott's face, memorizing. Features I might have passed on the street without a second glance. Average height, thinning hair, nothing remarkable except his ability to destroy my family. Budget motel on Elm Street, Martin continued, sliding over receipts. 3 separate occasions, November 8th, 12th, and 15th. Same days your wife claimed she was shopping or at yoga. The evidence was overwhelming. GPS data showing Linda's car at the motel during times she claimed to be elsewhere. Restaurant receipts for 2 people at romantic establishments across town. Video footage of her and Scott entering the motel room, kissing against his car, holding hands like teenagers. Martin handed me a USB drive. "Everything's on here," he explained. "Photos, video, timestamps, financial records. His wife has no idea. I verified that. She stays home with their kids while he's out destroying families." I held the USB drive like a weapon, because that's exactly what it was. "One more thing," Martin added. "Your wife's been sloppy. Credit card charges at Victoria's Secret, expensive restaurants, a jewelry store. Either she thinks you're stupid or she doesn't care if you find out. The disrespect was somehow worse than the betrayal. 23 years of marriage, and she thought so little of me that she couldn't even bother to cover her tracks properly." I drove home with the evidence burning in my pocket, watching Linda cook dinner like nothing had changed. She hummed while stirring pasta sauce, checking her phone between stirs. When it buzzed with a text, she smiled that radiant smile, the one I now knew belonged to another man. "How was work, honey?" she asked, kissing my cheek with lips that had kissed Scott Mercer 3 days ago. "Fine," I replied, marveling at how easily the lie came. Same old numbers, but I was already counting different numbers. How much our house was worth, how much was in our savings, how much alimony I could avoid paying with this evidence. I looked at those photos, my wife's hand on another man's chest, her head thrown back laughing at something he said, her walking into that cheap motel like she had every right, and I felt something inside me die. Or maybe it was something being born, something cold, something patient, something that would make them both pay. Patricia Vance's law office occupied the 32nd floor of downtown's most prestigious building, all glass and chrome and the kind of intimidating luxury that announced serious money changed hands here. She was 50-something, silver-haired, with the predatory elegance of a shark in designer suits. Her success rate in contested divorces was 92%. "Mr. Brennan," she said, reviewing the evidence Martin had gathered. "This is a prosecutor's dream and a cheating spouse's nightmare. With adult children, we don't have custody complications. She gets nothing. The USB drive sat between us like a loaded gun." "No alimony?" I asked. "With evidence this clear? She'll be lucky to leave with her clothes," Patricia replied, her smile razor-sharp. "We'll file for divorce citing adultery, and with your documentation, she won't have grounds to contest anything. The house, savings, retirement accounts, everything stays with you." "How long?" I inquired. "I can have papers drafted by Thursday," she answered. "Would you prefer she be served at home or at work?" I thought about Linda's co-workers at the dental office, how gossip spread through small workplaces like wildfire. But that wasn't the right audience for maximum damage. "At home," I decided. "Thursday evening. Make sure the whole family is there." Patricia nodded approvingly. Witnesses to her reaction. Smart. But I wasn't finished. My next stop required more courage than anything I'd done so far. Rebecca Mercer lived in a modest two-story house on the other side of town, the kind of neighborhood where families made decent livings but counted every dollar. Her house was smaller than mine, older, with children's bikes scattered across the front yard and a minivan in the driveway that had seen better years. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, gathering strength for what I was about to do. Rebecca Mercer had done nothing wrong except marry the wrong man. But she deserved to know the truth, and Scott deserved to have his world implode from multiple directions simultaneously. Rebecca answered the door with flour on her hands and exhaustion in her eyes, the look of a mother who'd been managing 3 children all day. She was pretty in a tired way, blonde hair pulled back, wearing jeans and an old sweater. "Mrs. Mercer?" "My name is Thomas Brennan," I said. "We need to talk about your husband." Her face went through a dozen expressions: confusion, fear, recognition of disaster approaching. "Is Scott hurt?" she asked worriedly. "Not physically," I replied. "May I come in?" She led me to a living room that spoke of careful budgeting and children's priorities: worn furniture, toys in corners, family photos covering every surface. 3 beautiful kids smiled from those frames, unaware their father was about to destroy everything. I placed the investigation report on her coffee table between us. "Mrs. Mercer, your husband is having an affair with my wife," I said quietly. "I have proof." She stared at the manila folder like it might explode. "That's impossible," she protested. "Scott works long hours, but he's not. He wouldn't." I opened the folder, revealing the photographs. Rebecca's hands flew to her mouth as she saw her husband kissing another woman, entering hotel rooms, holding Linda's hand across restaurant tables. "How long?" she whispered. "At least 2 months, probably longer," I answered honestly. "I'm sorry." She broke down then, shoulders shaking as she cried for the life she thought she had. I sat quietly, offering tissues, recognizing my own grief reflected in a stranger's living room. "My kids," she sobbed. "How do I tell my kids their father is a liar?" "The same way my son told me," I replied gently. "With courage you didn't know you had." I left her with copies of everything, knowing she'd file for divorce within days. Scott's life was about to explode from multiple directions, and he'd never see it coming. Thursday evening arrived with surgical precision. I'd orchestrated everything perfectly. Dinner at 6, everyone home, the table set like any normal family meal. Linda cooked her famous chicken parmesan, humming while she worked, completely oblivious to the storm approaching. Sophie talked about college applications. Jake managed to participate without looking at his mother. Linda shared gossip from the dental office, animated and cheerful, her phone buzzing with texts that made her smile. The doorbell rang at 7:15. "I'll get it," Linda said cheerfully, probably expecting a package or neighbor. She opened the door to find a serious-looking man with a clipboard and manila envelope. "Linda Brennan?" he asked formally. "Yes?" she replied confused. "You've been served." I watched from the dining room as confusion clouded her face. She signed for the envelope mechanically, probably thinking it was some bureaucratic nonsense. But when she opened it and read "Petition for Divorce," her face went white. She stumbled back into the dining room, papers trembling in her hands. "Thomas, what is this?" she demanded. "Some kind of joke?" I reached into my jacket and pulled out a second manila envelope, the investigation report. I placed it on the table and scattered the photographs like playing cards. Linda saw herself kissing Scott Mercer and collapsed into her chair. "Explain those," I said quietly. She tried. Oh, how she tried. Tears, denials, claims that the photos were doctored, that I'd hired actors, that this was all some elaborate misunderstanding. "This isn't real," she protested desperately. "Thomas, you know me." Sophie screamed about betrayal. "How could you do this to us?" she cried. Jake told her to shut up and get out. "You're disgusting," he said coldly. Linda begged them to understand, to forgive, to give her another chance. "Please," she pleaded. "It didn't mean anything." "I love this family." "1 hour," I announced calmly. "Pack what you can carry and leave," she begged. She cried. She promised it meant nothing, that she loved me, that we could fix this. I watched her break apart on our living room floor and felt absolutely nothing, because she was right about one thing. We could never go back. I'd make sure of that. 1 month later, the legal machinery was grinding both marriages to dust with ruthless efficiency. Patricia Vance was proving worth every dollar. Linda's lawyer had advised immediate settlement after reviewing the evidence. I kept everything: house, savings, retirement accounts, even the car Linda had driven to her motel meetings. Rebecca Mercer was taking Scott to the cleaners with similar brutality. Full custody of their 3 children, alimony, child support that would cripple him financially for the next decade. Scott's reputation had crumbled at work. Word spread quickly in their office. The sales manager caught cheating, destroying 2 families, lying to everyone. His boss demoted him to avoid the scandal. Colleagues gossiped. His commission-based income plummeted as clients requested different representatives. His own children refused to see him after Rebecca explained why Daddy wouldn't be living with them anymore. Linda tried reaching out to Jake and Sophie repeatedly, calls, texts, emails, showing up at Sophie's school. Both kids blocked her everywhere. Sophie's words were particularly harsh when she called one evening. "She chose him over us," my daughter said bitterly. "Why should we forgive her?" I didn't argue. Jake and I had developed a routine of evening walks, something born from that first terrible conversation at the park. It became our time to talk, to process, to rebuild our relationship on the foundation of shared truth rather than comfortable lies. 2 months after the revelation, we were walking through downtown when Jake suddenly stopped, his hand gripping my arm. "Dad," he whispered urgently, "across the street." I followed his gaze and saw a man climbing out of a beat-up Honda Civic, not the black SUV from the investigation photos. The man was thinner than in the pictures, wearing clothes that had seen better days, moving with the defeated posture of someone whose world had collapsed. "That's him," Jake confirmed quietly. "That's Scott Mercer." I studied the man who had helped destroy my family. 43 years old, looking 50, hair thinner than in the photos, face gaunt with stress. He locked his pathetic car and headed toward an alley shortcut between buildings, a narrow passage with no cameras, no witnesses, just shadows and the smell of garbage. Jake and I exchanged a look. No words needed. We crossed the street pulling our hoods up, hands shoved deep in jacket pockets. "Scott Mercer," I called out. He turned at the sound of his name, recognition dawning slowly as he saw my face. His skin went pale. "You're Linda's husband," he said nervously. "And you're the man who destroyed my family," I replied coldly. Before Scott could respond, Jake threw the first punch, a right hook that snapped his head sideways and sent him stumbling into the brick wall. I drove my knee into his stomach with all 23 years of rage behind it. Scott doubled over, gasping. We didn't stop. Jake channeled months of watching his mother lie, of seeing his father's pain, of having his family ripped apart by this stranger's selfishness. His fists found Scott's ribs, his face, anywhere that would cause maximum damage. I thought about Linda's laughter in those photos, her radiant smile directed at this pathetic excuse for a man. The motel room where they'd played house while I paid bills and raised children and believed in marriage. Scott tried to fight back initially, throwing weak punches that barely connected. "Stop!" he pleaded desperately. "Please, I'm sorry." But he was soft, weak, the kind of man who snuck around motel rooms instead of facing his problems directly. We were harder, father and son united by betrayal, strengthened by truth, armed with righteous fury. "You should have thought about that before," Jake growled, landing another blow to his ribs. When Scott collapsed to the alley floor, whimpering and bleeding, we weren't finished. Kicks to his ribs, his back, his legs. Methodical, clinical. Each impact was a memory erased. Every family dinner Linda had lied through. Every night she'd come home late with excuses. Every day I'd trusted her while she planned her next meeting with him. Finally, when Scott was a broken, groaning heap, I crouched beside him and whispered close to his swollen ear, "You destroyed my family," I hissed. "You turned my wife into a liar and my children into victims. Every time you look in the mirror, every time you try to explain to your kids why Daddy doesn't live with them anymore, remember this moment. Remember what it cost to cross the wrong family." We walked away, pulling our hoods tighter, disappearing into the night like ghosts, seeking justice in a world that rarely provides it. Behind us, Scott Mercer lay broken in the dark, too terrified to scream, too ashamed to call for help, learning the difference between consequences and punishment. We didn't speak on the walk home. Didn't need to. My knuckles were split and bleeding. Jake's jaw was clenched so tight I heard his teeth grinding. And somewhere behind us, in that dark alley, Scott Mercer was learning what it costs to cross the wrong family. 2 weeks later, Scott was released from the hospital after 14 days. Broken ribs, fractured jaw, concussion, severe bruising that painted his body in shades of purple and yellow. The police investigated but found nothing. No witnesses, no cameras, no leads. The case went cold within a month. Linda made one final attempt to reconcile, sending an email that Sophie read aloud at dinner with dripping contempt. "I made a mistake. I'm sorry. Can we please talk? I love you all so much." Jake deleted it without hesitation. "No," he said firmly. That evening I sat on the back porch with a beer, staring at stars that seemed brighter now, clearer somehow. Jake joined me, settling into the chair beside mine, the chair that used to be Linda's. "Dad, do you think Scott knows it was us?" he asked quietly. "He knows," I replied confidently. "But he'll never say anything. How can you be sure?" Jake pressed. I sipped my beer, considering. "Because men like Scott are cowards," I explained. "That's why they destroy families instead of building them. He's too afraid of what admitting the truth might cost him." "Are you okay?" he asked. "With everything that happened?" I thought about the question genuinely. I'd lost my wife, but I hadn't lost my children. I'd lost my marriage, but I'd gained something harder, the knowledge that some families survive by becoming unbreakable. Inside, Sophie was on the phone with a college advisor, planning her future with the confidence of someone who knew her father would support her dreams. The house was smaller now, quieter, but it was ours. No cheating wife, no home-wrecking coward, no lying manipulator could take that away. The truth is simple. Some betrayals can't be forgiven. Some wounds can't be healed. But some families, the ones that matter, survive by becoming something harder, something unbreakable. And that's exactly what we became. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.